Heavenly Father, we have gathered as your children to worship you. Touch our lives with your love and inspire us by your Spirit, that we may love one another in thought and word and deed, according to the command of your Son, our Saviour Jesus. Amen.
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 So, a question. This once familiar item, not necessarily as familiar as it once was. Why did people buy so much toilet roll? Now, yeah, it was just open question, and we'll see where we go. Why was there such a rush? What drove that rush for toilet roll purchasing in all the supermarkets across the world over the last few weeks? What do you think?
Because it's one of the essential things we need in our bathroom.
Okay. Which we all have every, I don't suppose, I don't know I've ever run out of toilet paper in my life. There's always been toilet paper. So
I honestly don't know why, because there are other alternatives you could use in the bathroom if you run out of toilet roll.
Thank you, bye-bye. We won't go down that line. Why was there the rush? Why was there the rush?
Because one person panic bought it, and then we all copied them.
Yeah, okay. And why were people panic buying it?
Because it ran out in Australia. It seemed to do it there first, then it came over here.
Yeah, I don't know why. But what's driving the panic buying?
Stress.
Stress, yeah. What's driving the stress? Okay, we'll come to that in a bit. I was pondering which bits of the regular service to include in this. Different things have different meanings to different people. There are some things which for some people are an essential ingredient of a service, and one of those is the confession. I never really like to call it the confession. I prefer to call it a prayer for God's help, because it's not just about God forgiving us, it's about God helping us to do better as we go forwards. Again, I was hoping to share the screen. I'll learn how to do that for next week. But it's the prayer that we normally use, so if you're reasonably familiar with it, then mumble along with me. Most merciful Father, we confess that we have sinned in thought and word and deed. We have not loved you with our whole heart. We have not loved our neighbours as ourselves. In your mercy, forgive what we have been. Help us to amend what we are and direct what we shall be, that we may do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. As I always say, God loves to forgive. You don't have to worry about that. It's the going forwards bit that's important. Now we've got a reading. The theme that we would have had, this would have been the last of our five session series in Lent, looking at what is the good news. And I was looking today to bring together two themes. One of the theme was that we are created. God made us deliberately. We're not an accident. We're not just the result of the Big Bang and a 1 in several trillion chance of life occurring on a planet. There is a sense that there is purpose, there is intention, there is design to the universe. And we are part of that by what processes maybe we'll never understand, but we are intended. That was going to be the Songs of Praise theme. And then in the Faith in Life section, I was going to get on to the fact that part of that design is eternal life. And that's key to Jesus's teaching throughout the gospel. He's got a focus, really strong focus on the fact that it's not just about this life, there's more to come. That seemed like the thing to focus on. Stephen's going to do the reading for us. It's from Mark's Gospel, chapter 8. We could have had exactly the same passage from Matthew and from Luke, but this is Mark's account. starting at verse 31. Thank you, Stephen.
Where do I stop?
31 to 36.
That's okay. This is from the NIV Bible. Then Jesus began to tell them that the Son of Man must suffer many terrible things and be rejected by the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but 3 days later he would rise from the dead. As he talked about this openly with his disciples, Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Jesus turned around and looked at his disciples, then reprimanded Peter. "Get away from me, Satan," he said. "You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's." Then, calling the crowd to join his disciples, he said, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must turn from your selfish ways, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake and for the sake of the good news, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul?" This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to
Thanks
God.
be to God.
So, what has that got to do with toilet paper? Seems to me that the toilet paper thing was driven by fear. People were suddenly afraid. I mean, why it was toilet paper is random and possibly just because it got started in Australia and went on social media and everybody panicked about it. But behind the panic was fear, and ultimately the thing that people were afraid of was dying. Toilet paper is not going to save your life, but it's kind of symbolic. And of course the foods all went as well. The pasta and the baked beans and things like that all went. And they went because people were afraid. They were afraid that they wouldn't have enough to eat. They were afraid that they wouldn't have what they basically needed. And underlying that is a fundamental fear of dying. This disease is on its way, and I might die. And I need to shut myself away in my bunker with as much toilet roll as I can get hold of, and see the disaster out. Otherwise, I might die. I don't know. That's my thought. And what Jesus is addressing is that fundamental fear of dying. But he's addressing it in a phenomenal way, because he's actually saying you don't need to be afraid of dying. Dying will be fine. In fact, I'm going to go and do it myself just to show you. Jackie's shaking her head and pulling her face. Put that into words.
No, thank you. I quite like having you around. Not ready to let go of you yet.
Sorry, Rob, you're stuck.
What?
Anyway, that'd be taking it into your own hands. That's not allowed.
No. Well, I'm not planning to go and top myself.
I was going to say.
What is it? What is it actually that we're afraid of when we're afraid of dying? Can we peel that onion one more layer? What's behind the fear of death?
I mean, I guess sometimes you think a lot about maybe, for example, whether the people you leave behind are going to be okay, children, wife, and it's always this. Especially if you are the central person in the family, then the question.
There is a sense that is a fear of dying as well. That's a fear of them dying.
Well, that's true as well. Although maybe sometimes we say, I will do this, I will do that, I will do that. So you think I haven't done all what I'm supposed to be doing, and all of that in your head as well could be a reason to start thinking maybe I don't want to go yet.
I had I think it was as a dream. It might have been a daydream this week, in which I got coronavirus, and I got the aftershock second phase of it, and I was in intensive care on a ventilator. And then in this, was it a dream, was it a daydream? I'm not entirely sure. I think it was in that kind of half awake, half asleep phase. Jesus came and stood at the end of my bed, or a Jesus character stood at the end of my bed and said, do you want to come? Or do you want to stay? And I kind of, you know how it is when you kind of half awake, half asleep, and I woke up with this question in my mind. If I was given that choice, given that choice in that clear way of Jesus standing at the bed and saying, you can come with me now, or you can stay. It's your choice. It was quite a profound awakening, to say the least. But that comes down to the fear of death. Now, within that scenario, death wasn't frightening, and a lot of what we're afraid of is the uncertainty of it. But within that scenario, there was a clear assurance that what lay ahead was a good thing. But within it, there was that perception of choice. And in this part of the gospel story, Jesus is making that choice. He's choosing to go to Jerusalem in order to die. He has that choice. St. Paul talks about the choice in a similar way, and he says, to live, what would I choose? To live is Christ, to die is gain. There's lots to do, but it'd be wonderful to go with. But at the heart of, I think, the whole gospel message is Jesus is saying, look, friends, death isn't the scary thing that you think it is. Death isn't the obliteration. It isn't the damning judgment that you're afraid of. There is this life which we've had, but there is another existence which is beyond this life, which is, I would tend nowadays to use the word timeless rather than eternal. Eternal sounds to me like it could get boring after a bit. But there is a timeless existence where time simply is of no relevance, where what is relevant, to use Paul's phrase, is faith and hope and love. And that is there. And the door is open to it. And we can go through that door, through death. And Jesus challenges us by going through that door at the age of 33. And I think he does that to show us that it's not something to be afraid of. He does it confident that there is good on the other side of that door too. And to reassure us that even though we can't see the other side of that door, it is there and it works. And it's called Passion Sunday this Sunday. This is the classic theme for Passion Sunday, and we've got Palm Sunday next Sunday, and then we're on into the Holy Week story and Good Friday. But surely not this particular one, but this was driven by a fear of death. Because our society is desperately afraid. Our society is comfortable and well off. We have plenty of wallpaper, and we're happy with that. And coronavirus has come along, and it has rattled the death rattle at us. And Jesus says, "Don't be afraid. You don't need to be afraid. The worst that can happen is wonderful. And that's not a bad deal after all. What difference does this make on daily life? I don't know. I'll pass that over to you. If we could truly not be afraid of dying, what difference would that make to the way we live?
I mean, if you look at the story itself and your own premonition in terms of there is an element in which you will say that Jesus knew where he was going. Jesus knew what was ahead of him. And if you look at the dream itself that you had, if it was a scenario where, for example, as you say, somebody with horns and fire and everything coming at you, you'll be thinking, no, I don't want to go there. So in life, with all of these things, unfortunately, yes, we follow a lot of the things around us. And sometimes we forget more about the things that we already have. And going after things like that, I mean, that is a situation that I have maybe a more of a direct something that has happened. Like when we had the Rebel War, and you can hear people saying they are coming. You don't wait to know who is coming or what is coming. You're off and running. And it's like nothing is happening, and that panic killed a lot of people. So it's the very situation I guess we are facing. There is toilet roll, now food. But I went to the supermarket on yesterday at Costco, and everything we wanted, we got, including toilet roll. So you ask yourself, what is it? But I guess maybe it's inherent in us. We are all human beings, and we tend to do things human beings do. Some of us do it more selfishly, and some of us do it maybe a little bit more openly. But at the end of the day, we have to maybe just look after the things that really, really matter, which is sometimes we forget about them.
Anybody else want to chip in?
I was just going to say, I think it's instinct. I think our natural instinct is to try and preserve life. I think, as Bibo was saying, really. And I think it's hard to go against what feels very much inherent in nature and protectionist. Because at some level, we have to live every day, and that requires you protect yourself. But then this is kind of different again, if you're actually trying to, not as eloquently as bye-bye, but yeah, you have to, whatever the word is, actively challenge yourself to think differently when faced with that. You know, and I guess, you know, just taking it to another extreme here, the Holocaust or whatever, people went to all sorts of lengths to survive and then did extraordinary things. And where was God's, you know, was God intending them to stay alive? Did they do that by their own effort? Did they not do that? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, at what level do you kind of go, okay, I'm not going to try and survive, or I'm just going to let what happens happen? And what, do you know what, that for me is the tricky thing in all of this. It's like, how much do you keep your own agency of, you know, trying to do things to look after yourself, to care for yourself at the same time as looking after others? But at the same time, at what point do you go, no, like the guy that gave up his ventilator, the Italian priest, who said, no, it's okay, let the lad have it, and he died and the lad survived. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think the challenge.
In the reading that Stephen read, Peter took Jesus aside and began to rebuke him, basically saying, you know, this is ridiculous thinking. It's stupid thinking. Going to Jerusalem in order to die is stupid. And Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. You're setting your mind on, not on divine things, but on human things. So I do think Jesus is really challenging us to look at it differently. Yes, as Jackie says, we have an instinct, really fundamental instinct, especially as mammals, to survive as long as we can. But Jesus is suggesting that there's a different perspective available.
But I guess sometimes as well, it is the fear of death that we end up dying. People run away from the fear of death, and in the process, causing them more harm or getting themselves into more trouble than they actually need. which is why when Jesus was talking to Peter, he tried to let him understand that it is not the element of what you think. We all think maybe dying is a problem. But what about if you dying is actually what's going to make things better for you, or what is actually going to... If Jesus did not die on the cross, what will have happened to the scriptures in essence? Will it have been much better off, or will it have been worse off? I guess that is a question I will never know.
We would have the story. I mean, it's I've not done one of these Zooms before. Half of us are on picture and half of us aren't. Beth, Sally, Cheryl, Doris, and if you want to chip in. Thank you, Doris.
Yes. Oh, you're looking at me, are you?
I'm
Yes.
Well-
looking at a grey rectangle that says Doris.
Hey.
I'm enjoying.
Hi, good morning. I'm listening.
Beth has frozen mid-word. Not quite sure what happened there.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
she's gone again. Oh,
I'm
she's
I
back.
said I've been enjoying listening.
Yeah.
That's fine. Listening is allowed. I'm just giving you an opportunity to join in.
Yes, I hope my dressing gown is allowed as well.
Dressing gown. Well, I was very nearly here in my dressing gown because I forgot to set the alarm this morning. But that's a different story.
I'm hearing you.
So,
Hearing you all.
thank you, Doris.
Yeah.
Cheryl, you awake? No, she's
Sorry?
Oh, she's got her mic off.
not.
Who's
So
that?
she's saying something, we can't hear her.
Okay, I can't. Oh, I can't see that. Yes. Your microphone is switched off, Cheryl. Bottom left-hand corner, you can mute or unmute your microphone.
Of course, she may just not want to talk.
Yeah, you may want to stay. It's probably just listening to music and singing to herself. Anyway, Jesus says on this, those who want to save their life will lose it. Those who want to lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what profit is it to them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life?
Lose his soul.
Or lose his soul, his life. It was soul in the translation that Stephen read from. It says life here.
Oh, okay.
So he's saying there's something worse than dying here. What's worse than dying is losing your soul. And back to the Mibogro, the sheer selfishness that was expressed in the supermarkets in that week was the very worst thing. That's the worst of humanity. The people who are sitting, with toilets with so many toilet rolls in them, who are stacked up with that attitude of I'm going to have that. Nobody else is going to. I don't care about the others. There was a fundamental selfishness there, and that's the real problem. That's the real problem. Fighting for life sometimes can be worse than dying. Dying itself, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's not the worst that you can happen. If you die, when you die, because let's face it, it's going to happen, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So don't worry about that. That's Jesus's message. Get on and live. Don't worry about dying. Let's pray. Not quite sure how praying is going to work in this format. I thought maybe towards the end of it we would try. Say again, I can't share the screen, but we'd say together the prayer of St. Francis. But let's just be quiet for a minute. I think praying works best really when people say what it is that they're praying for, rather than necessarily do the praying, and then prompted by you with a suggestion of what to pray for. Then we can just in the moments after add our prayers to that. So anybody like to chip in something or someone that they're praying for that we can pray for together?
Pray that COVID-19 will soon start phasing out.
Yeah.
And for all those who are suffering as a result of this virus. God bless you.
Yeah, let's add to that, especially dear old Boris. He's got it. And he's trying to run the country at the same time.
Yes. Prince Charles has got it.
Prince Charles has got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and all those who've got it, just pray for them and pray for the frontliners.
Yeah.
Have to take care of them and they themselves get.
And fear amongst the frontliners, I think, that was
Yeah.
expressed in a news clip this week. Fear is one of the key drivers, I think.
Yeah.
And for the people who are facing financial uncertainty, because I think that's a major fear for a lot of people, probably more than the virus, I think, at times.
Yeah, that's a big fear.
Well, we have to keep praying for our families, and especially those who are not able to go out, the old ones. And the St. Catherine community, it's a lot of people who, I guess, are more locked down than we are. At least we are still able to go out.
Yeah. And also, I think the people who are more cut off. Yeah. I mean, computer connectivity has been a fantastic thing in this, and some people don't have that. I'm glad I've got it. Bye bye, you star. Okay, let's let the words for the prayer are appearing on the screen by the less whizzy part of modern technology. Let's say it together. A prayer for serenity. God, grant me
serenity to accept
the things
I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. And wisdom to know the difference.
Living
one day at a time. Enjoying one moment at a time. Accepting hardships as the pathway to peace.
And let's say the Lord's Prayer as well. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Amen. These Skype things, these Zoom things, you get 40 minutes in a group one, unless you pay, and I haven't paid. And I'm not quite sure what happens, whether we just get cut off at the end or
not always.
Or not. Sorry?
Not always. Sometimes it just allows you to have more for some reason. I don't understand. But
okay.
Anyway.
So I'm not quite sure how this is going to end. That's all I'm saying. But I think we should kind of do the piece somehow. So I don't know whether your screen is worked out. So I will call people to share their piece one at a time, and I'm going around the screen as I see it. So top left, I've got Jackie. Jackie, the peace of the Lord be with you.
Peace be with you all.
And
Stephen, peace be
with you.
Peace be with you, everybody.
Bye bye. Peace with you.
Peace be with you, everybody, and stay safe.
Peace be with you.
Beth, peace be with you.
Peace be with you.
Peace be with you.
Sally, peace be with you.
Oh.
Changing the nappy.
Silence from Sally. Cheryl, peace be with you.
Peace be with you all.
Ah.
And
Yay!
Can you hear